In Japan, an army trainee claims 2 lives while injuring 1.
The military says the fatality occurred after the recruit opened fire inside the facility. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Marcos administration reaffirms flood control plans in the Philippines. UAE vows support for the Philippines. India and Pakistan brace for cyclone Biparjoy's arrival. Algerian president to attend St. Petersburg summit. And northern Peru struggles to combat dengue. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. tasks the Water Resources Management Office to come up with flood management plans. Eden Santos for the report.
In a sectoral meeting, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. highlights the need for a comprehensive plan to control flooding. The President assigned the Water Resources Management Office to formulate a plan to protect coastal communities and Metro Manila from flooding. The directives include the construction of water impounding facilities to manage the country's water resources. The Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, and the National Irrigation Administration were also present during the briefing. The President noted the 351 billion pesos estimated cost of the flood control project of DPWH in Metro Manila, along with its perimeters. The present officials also discussed the Rainwater Collection System Program, or RWCS. The program constructed 6,002 RWCS from July 2022 to May 2023. The program is in compliance with Republic Act No. 6716, which aims to provide the construction of rainwater collectors and rehabilitation of existing water wells in all barangays nationwide. Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Information and Communication Technology, or DICT, says 65% of Filipinos are still not connected to the internet. With the 35% who have internet access, DICT notes to further connect each barangays nationwide to cyberspace. Women in ICT Development Index data shows that 86% of Filipino women have access to the internet. However, they do not utilize it for valuable activities. Roughly 20% use the internet for employment and business opportunities, and 55% of women purchase goods or services online.
The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, says the use of artificial intelligence in the workplace should be regulated ahead of its disadvantages. The agency notes that some Solons push to regulate AI, claiming that it threatens the jobs of Filipinos in business process outsourcing, or BPO, and manufacturing. DOLE adds that the agency is conducting a study on AI to prepare for the possible displacement of workers due to AI advancement. DOLE is also unraveling emerging jobs ahead of training workers in the use of new technologies.
Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez, said there is no secret to the U.S. proposal for the government to allow the housing of refugees from Afghanistan. He also says, should the government approve Washington's request to accept Afghans, they will not permanently stay in the Philippines. Kabul fell under the rule of Taliban in August 2021. This prompted American forces to pull out of the country. Romualdez explained that the refugees would be assessed through special immigration visas. But in the event that the fleeting nationals get declined, Romualdez said they will be repatriated back to Afghanistan. He also denies accusations that he was lobbying Malacanang to accede to the request. The envoy added that the Philippine government is carefully studying Washington's proposal.
The Office of Senate Majority Leader Joel Villanueva has received hundreds of complaints from debtors being harassed by online lending platforms. This led the senator to file a resolution to probe illegal online lending platforms. Mian Corvera reports.
Senator Joel Villanueva seeks to investigate unauthorized and unregistered online lending platforms in the country. The Senate Majority Leader says these illegal online lending platforms victimize hundreds of vulnerable Filipinos. In filing Senate Resolution number 641, Villanueva explains that as lending transactions through digital platforms increase, there has also been an increase in abusive collection and debt recovery practices. He says their office has been receiving hundreds of complaints from victims. They were harassed and shamed by the collecting agents of these online lending platforms for being unable to pay their loans in due time. Villanueva insists this inhumane and unethical practice of collecting payments should be stopped. He says some lending firms unduly increase their interest rates and other charges for failure to pay on schedule. Some collectors, according to Villanueva, also hurl hurtful words or violent language at the debtors to force them to pay. He asserts measures should be in place and properly implemented to protect the interests and general welfare of the consumers when transacting with registered and unauthorized online lending companies. Villanueva also urged the Senate to look into reports that some lending platforms are engaged in irresponsible data harvesting which violates a person's rights to privacy and safe and secure transactions. Earlier this year, the Securities and Exchange Commission revoked the certificates of registration of 2,084 lending and financing companies that failed to secure their certificates of authority. SEC also canceled the certificates of authority of 39 financing and lending companies over various violations. Mian Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Health Secretary Ted Herbosa says that the Department of Health has started to distribute the bivalent COVID-19 vaccines nationwide. According to Secretary Herbosa, the 390,000 doses of bivalent COVID-19 vaccines donated by COVAX were distributed primarily to the National Capital Region, while the rest went to other areas. The Secretary notes that they will prioritize providing the vaccine to the elderly than to those with comorbidities. He adds that they need to start the vaccination for these priority individuals with the bivalent dose due to its shelf life of 6 months upon delivery.
The Department of Health will release the allowance for healthcare workers who served during the COVID-19 pandemic. JD Mahinay reports.
According to Health Secretary Ted Herbosa, the Department of Health will release the remaining allowances of the COVID-19 healthcare workers.
I'll get on top of this because I feel the nurses are our real priority. And I'm going to tell this on national TV. I really love the nurses because they are our healthcare system.
He notes that 90% of the healthcare workers' benefits, especially those working in government, were released. Meanwhile, healthcare workers on private sector have ongoing problem with the hospital administrations that did not process the paperwork for the said allowance.
So sa government na bigay lahat yan. So make sure, kasi you know why? The private hospitals don't have the same processes we do in government. Lahat ng papel yung bago gagawa ka. Alam ng mga government director hospitals na makukuha sila every centavo niyan.
The balance lies at 12.57 billion pesos from the 19.96 billion peso price allotted to healthcare and non-healthcare workers. JD Mahinay reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Despite the unrest of the Mayon volcano, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. decided to visit the evacuees in Albay. The president from South Cotabato immediately went to Albay to personally assess the situation and give aid to the victims of the Mayon's volcanic activity. He went to the evacuation centers in Ginobatan Community College Evacuation Center and San Jose Elementary School Evacuation Center. Marcos distributed the food and medicine packs from UAE to the displaced residents. He also lauded the UAE for their big contribution to the evacuees. The UAE donated more than 50 tons of humanitarian aid for the affected residents of the affected area.
It's always very important, and this is, I think, those of you who have been with me to any of the other disaster areas that we have gone through, is that we make the coordination between local government and the agencies of national government close, because that's the only way, especially when very soon after the disaster has happened. It is really, the LGUs really take the brunt of the work. Pero kailangan binabaka pa ng husto ng national government. So I'm glad that we are paying attention to that.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. welcomes the UAE ambassador in Malacanang Palace. Mark Tapel has the details.
The government of the United Arab Emirates shows its eagerness and commitment to the Philippines as it vows support for the country's environmental and economic programs. UAE Ambassador Mohammed Ubaid Salem Al-Kataam Al-Saabi tells President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that Abu Dhabi eyes the Philippines to join the Global Mangrove Alliance that will benefit the country. The president notes that joining the alliance would be good for the Philippines. He adds the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, will be grateful to participate in the alliance. The UAE envoy also relayed an invitation for the president to attend the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference in December at the Expo City in Dubai. The president personally thanked the UAE officials for aiding those affected by the Mayon volcano eruption. According to the president, roughly 50 metric tons of humanitarian aid are provided to support the victims of the volcano eruption who are in Alert Level 3 status. Mark Tapel, reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Chinese naval training ship Jiguang arrived at the South Harbor of Manila this morning. More than 300 people, including Chinese ambassador to the Philippines Wang Xilian and representatives of the Philippine Navy, welcomed Jiguang at the port. Huang said their ship commanders will pay a courtesy call to the Philippine Navy and officials of the Philippine Department of National Defense. He further said Jiguang will remain in the Philippines for a 3-day goodwill visit. Philippine Navy officers and Chinese crew members will also hold friendly cultural and sports activities. This is the first visit to the Philippines by ship Jiguang. Sources say the ship will open to the public for 2 hours a day during its stay. Coming up, Iran President Ibrahim Raisi visits Nicaragua. Russian President Putin considers pulling out of the Ukraine grain deal. And Donald Trump pleads not guilty to dozens of criminal cases. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Businesses are increasingly accepting the importance of balancing profit with people and the planet. The cement manufacturing industry has traditionally been associated with high carbon emissions and environmental damage. But now, some companies are taking a different approach, prioritizing people and planet, implementing sustainable practices to reduce their impact on the environment and contributing to society. In today's episode, we will speak with Sam Manloso Jr., head of Geocycle, a unit of Wholesome Philippines, to know more about the crucial role they play in promoting sustainable development in our country.
It's really important for us to transform old ways of doing business, make it sustainable, make it a way to better people, planet, and profit.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Health experts say China has reached more than 40% of COVID-19 positive cases. Data from the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, shows 164 COVID deaths in May. 2,777 suffered severe COVID infections. The CDC says the number kept increasing last month, affirming evidence of a COVID resurgence. Local reports say that there have been slight signs of extensive absenteeism at offices and factories. A Chinese health expert predicts that a second COVID wave, possibly with over 65 million cases a week, would peak by the end of June.
Japanese authorities arrested a trainee after allegedly killing 2 soldiers with a rifle at a military training range in the Gifu district. Police said the 18-year-old suspect seriously injured another man. The suspect was detained on the spot and charged on suspicion of attempted murder. Investigators said the male shooter fired 8 times at his instructors during the exercise drill. Police are looking into the specifics of his motive. The incident marks the first fatal shooting at a Japanese training facility in nearly 40 years.
Thousands are evacuated a day before Cyclone Biparjoy makes landfall in India and Pakistan. Classified as a very severe cyclonic storm, Biparjoy packs maximum sustained winds of up to 145 kilometers per hour. State weather stations said the cyclone is expected to make landfall on Thursday evening. The government of India has evacuated nearly 40,000 people to relief camps in Gujarat, but they advised the residents living within 10 kilometers of the Gujarat coast to leave. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, schools and government buildings were converted into relief camps to provide shelter to displaced people. Ships and boats have been moved to safety while hospitals in Pakistan were put on high alert. The Pakistani government also evacuated 100,000 people. Local reports said 4 people have been killed due to rains and floods brought by Cyclone Biparjoy. Experts cite climate change as a reason for the increasing cyclones in the Arabian Sea region.
Directly after his trip to Venezuela, Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi met with his Nicaraguan counterpart to rally against U.S. sanctions, a common theme that both leaders are currently facing. Raisi spoke at a joint appearance in Managua with Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega.
از اول پیروزی انقلاب اسلامی بین ایران اسلامی و کشور دوست و برادر ما نیکاراگوئه روابط بسیار خوبی بوده است.
Many top figures in Ortega's government also face several U.S. sanctions for crushing dissenters and imprisoning political rivals. His tour of allied nations in Latin America comes amid rising tensions with the administration of President Joe Biden. The U.S. has repeatedly accused Iran of supplying Russia with materials to build weapons production plants, ensuring a steady supply of tools and ammunition during its campaign against Ukraine. U.S. intelligence officials believe the plant in Russia would be operational early next year, but Iran has said it supplied drones to Russia before the start of the war. President Ebrahim Raisi's visit to Nicaragua is his second stop in his Latin American tour. He is also scheduled to visit Cuba, Iran's other ally in the region.
Por eso, siempre hemos dicho y repetido que somos revoluciones gemelas. De profundas raíces en la defensa de nuestra identidad, en la defensa de el bienestar de nuestro pueblo.
A new Ukrainian shelling has left one woman dead and 6 others injured. From Donetsk Republic, Russia, RT correspondent Roman Kosarev reports.
Woman was killed as the result of a Ukrainian artillery attack. The woman's name was Anastasia. Her mom is right now inside. It's very hard to comment on situations like these. The woman, Anastasia, she was in this store when the Ukrainian shell hit right next to the railway station. People were wounded. They're not being treated at a hospital.
Can you remember how it all happened?
There was some kind of shelling behind the station. It was loud. Then it was quiet, and in 1 second, everything was in smithereens.
What's wrong with you?
A tangential wound. I've already been to hospital. They did an x-ray. Everything is fine.
I just spoke with Anastasia's dad, and he said that he just buried his son, who was fighting for Donetsk People's Republic, and he was killed by Ukrainian military. This is a shell from a multiple launch rocket systems fired here by Ukrainian nationalists. Now, this is not the center of the city. This is a Kievsky district. It's a very popular place among the locals. As you can see, there are many shops there. And of course, there is the railway station there as well. Some trolleybus lines have been destroyed as well. As I understand, electricity is now down in this area too. Now, it's not very safe to stay here as this area is constantly under bombardment by Ukrainian military. Now, you can see there's another guy showing us that he was wounded by a shell, but of course, he didn't need treatment at a hospital. But as I'm talking right now, we can still hear shelling taking place on the outskirts of Donetsk. Now, several districts of the city have come under fire on this day. Roman Kosarev, RT, Donetsk Republic.
Russia is accused of a massive missile attack on civilian buildings in Kryvyi, the home city of President Volodymyr Zelensky. At least 11 people died and 28 others were injured. Further south in Belozerka, Ukraine says a priest was killed by Russian shelling in a church courtyard. The salvo comes after Kyiv's counteroffensive against Russian forces is underway, with the Ukrainians saying their troops have recaptured 7 settlements.
Germany's defense minister Boris Pistorius says Berlin cannot replace every Leopard 2 tank that gets disabled in Ukraine. But Pistorius asserts Germany will continue to supply Kyiv with weapons. He adds that Berlin will increase the number of modified Leopard 1A5 tanks in Ukraine. Pistorius' comments follow a series of reports by Russian forces saying they captured German tanks and U.S.-made Bradleys in the South Donetsk and Zaporizhia areas.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken believes a successful Ukraine offensive will force Russian President Vladimir Putin to negotiate with Kyiv.
Ukraine's success in the counteroffensive would do 2 things. It would strengthen its position at any negotiating table that emerges, and it may have the effect as well of actually causing Putin to finally focus on negotiating an end to the war that he started.
Рафаэль, всех потерь, они приближаются. Дякую за нашу зустріч, а головне за вашу присутність в Україні. Хотів би від вас попрацювати, і для нас також дуже важливо ще раз.
Blinken says Putin's objective to erase Ukraine from the map and to absorb it is a strategic failure. He asserts Putin's plans cannot succeed.
Russian President Vladimir Putin released a statement where he states that he was considering pulling out of the landmark Ukraine grain deal that allows grain from Ukraine to reach the global market. Moscow has repeatedly threatened to exit the crucial accord that grants Ukraine safe passage for grain to be exported via the Black Sea, demanding guarantees for its fertilizer exports. He accused Kyiv of using the sea corridor as a vantage point for Ukrainian ships to deploy maritime drones. When asked why he still allows the grain deal to persist despite Ukraine's counter-offensive advancements, Russia's president said that his commitment was not done out of fear for Ukraine, but for the food security and welfare of the poorest countries in the world, his allies in Africa and Latin America included. The UN-brokered deal is set for another renewal on July 17.
Вот мы сейчас думаем на тему о том, чтобы нам выйти из этой так называемой зерновой сделки. Тем более, что вот эти коридоры, по которым идут корабли, они постоянно используются противником для запуска беспилотников, морских беспилотников.
President Vladimir Putin gave out awards to individuals for their significant contributions to Russia. The recognitions include those who carved names in cinema, culture, and science. Putin awarded Russian actress Yulia Peresild and the boss of top Russian TV network Channel 1, Konstantin Ernst. He also handed out awards to Russian servicemen wounded in Ukraine. He pinned a medal on them and expressed his gratitude for their service to Russia. Putin also presented the commander of a rifle platoon the Hero of Russia Star. This is the highest Soviet-era award in Russia.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune arrives in Russia on an official state visit. Tebboune was always planning to visit Moscow at Russian President Vladimir Putin's invitation. He was greeted by a Russian delegation led by Agriculture Minister Dmitry Patrushev. The welcoming committee also included the presidential special representative for the Middle East and Africa, Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov, and Ambassador to Algeria Valery Shulvayev, which sets a strong precedent for the nature of their meetings during the visit. The visit comes with the premise of strengthening cooperation between the two friendly countries. Algiers and Moscow have long shared the close ties, with bilateral trade worth about $3 billion annually, based largely on mechanical construction, metals, and agriculture. Russia is also a major arms supplier to Algeria. Algiers has maintained warm ties with both Moscow and its European neighbors, despite having their allies divided over the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Tebboune will also take part in an international economic forum in St. Petersburg between June 14 to 17.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey made his first official visit abroad since his inauguration to Baku, where he met Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. The presidents of Turkey and Azerbaijan vowed to resolve what they call the Zangezur issue. Zangezur issue refers to a scheme drawn by Baku to have a land corridor through Armenia connecting to Nakhchivan.
Tabii en çok üzerinde durduğumuz ve bizim de hassasiyetimizi içeren Zengezur olayı. Bu Zengezur konusunu inşallah süratle halletmemiz halinde de tabii bu bize iki önemli adımı kazandıracak. Gerek
The two leaders also revived a declaration they signed 2 years ago in Artsakh-occupied Shushi. The declaration, which also has a military cooperation component, is seen as an agreement that binds Turkey and Azerbaijan closer together.
Zengezur dəhlizinin açılması qaçılmazdır. Nə qədər tez olsa o qədər yaxşıdır. Hər halda biz bu istiqamətdə öz səylərimizi artıracağıq.
Donald Trump pleads not guilty to dozens of criminal counts for mishandling some of the U.S. government's most sensitive secrets and scheming to prevent their return. Julian Bukayan reports.
In a historic appearance Tuesday in federal court, former President Donald Trump gives himself up to U.S. Marshals in Miami for a brief hearing. A day prior to his 77th birthday, Trump appears before a magistrate judge to be formally presented with 37 charges. These charges have been brought by a special counsel probe that opened after an FBI raid of his Florida mansion. His attorney Todd Blanche tells the hearing they are certainly entering a plea of not guilty. Just weeks ago, Trump denied state-level financial fraud charges in a separate case in Manhattan. The hearing comes with the former reality TV star's mounting legal woes, threatening to derail his bid to return to the Oval Office. The U.S. government is accusing Trump of violating the Espionage Act and other laws. This is when he removed classified documents upon leaving office in 2021 and failed to give them up to the National Archives. Authorities say he conspired to thwart investigators and knowingly shared national security secrets with people who did not have clearance. Miami officials were preparing for large-scale protests. Police had ramped up security well in advance of what turned out to be a few dozen Trump supporters converging near the courthouse. Trump lashed out on his Truth Social network earlier at Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who brought the charges. He called Smith a thug and a lunatic. Julian Bukayan, for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Argentina's president and the European Union chief signed a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, to boost cooperation in sustainable raw materials during her visit to Buenos Aires. The agreement is designed to boost cooperation on climate-friendly infrastructure, as well as new research on raw materials, especially lithium. Lithium is an ultralight battery metal that governments worldwide are keen to secure the supply of. Argentina is the world's fourth largest producer of lithium and has been attracting a wave of investment. Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia are part of South America's so-called lithium triangle, which holds the world's largest stock of the metal.
I hope we can get the Mercosur-EU agreement across the finishing line. We have exchanged a first letter. We are awaiting a response, and we are very much looking forward to work as hard as possible that we conclude this agreement as a win-win agreement as soon as possible.
Von der Leyen added that Argentina also had big potential for renewable energy, including solar and wind, as well as green hydrogen, a growing sector. The MOU comes as the EU and South America's Mercosur bloc push towards finalizing a trade deal, which some leaders hope can be included or concluded by the end of the year.
Nosotros queremos definitivamente un acuerdo con la Unión Europea, pero que balancee las economías de cada una de las regiones y que tenga en cuenta esas asimetrías, porque
Up next, Denver shooting leaves 9 injured. Asylum seekers in Ireland camp outside government office in Dublin. And hospital doctors in England stage 72-hour walkout. Matanang Agila International will be back after this short break. Don't go away.
Counterpoint, kikilalanin natin ang taong punong abala upang makamit ang target ng Administrasyong Marcos na 1 milyong housing unit taon-taon upang makamit ang 6.5 milyong unit na backlog ng pamahalaan.
Slogan po namin ni Presidente na wala pong Pilipino na walang bahay sa sariling bayan. Basta ikaw po ay may trabaho, dapat may bahay.
Ngayong Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi, dito lang sa Net 25. Wala pa hong demanda, tinuturo mo na. Nauna ho yung conclusion. Wala pa yung predicate, wala pang basis, nagsalita na.
Panalo tayo.
tayo pag together. Walang talo pag together. Let's stand together. Sa Net 25.
Nine people were shot and injured in the U.S. city of Denver early Tuesday. The shooting occurred about a mile from the Ball Arena, where the Denver Nuggets won their first NBA title. One of the two suspects was arrested and sustained gunshot injuries. Police believe that it was linked to an alleged drug deal. 3 victims were in critical condition, and the others sustained non-life-threatening injuries. It was one of 290 mass shootings recorded in the United States so far this year and has the highest rate of gun deaths of any developed country.
3 people have died and another 3 were injured in a series of attacks in the UK city of Nottingham. 2 19-year-old students were found stabbed to death in Ilkeston Road, west of Nottingham city centre. In another incident, a driver ran over 3 people with a stolen van in Milton Street. The police tasered and arrested the driver when they stopped him on Maple Street. The 3 people were taken to the hospital. 1 was in critical condition, and the other 2 had sustained minor injuries. Meanwhile, a man in his 50s was also found dead from knife attacks on Magdala Road. Authorities believe that the suspect stole the man's van before heading to Milton Street, where he then drove into people. Police are linking the said incidents, where they arrested a 31-year-old man. He now remains in police custody. No other arrests have been made.
We are still in the early stages of the investigation and need to determine exactly what the motives were behind this attack. We are keeping an open mind and are working closely with counter-terrorism policing to establish the facts, as we would normally do in this type of circumstances.
In Ecuador, a woman wakes up inside her coffin at her own funeral. This after 76-year-old Belia Montoya is seen breathing heavily in her open coffin while 2 men assist her. She is being treated at the same state hospital that declared her dead 2 days earlier. Her son said she was hitting the box with her left hand after the 5-hour wake. Montoya was admitted to hospital with a suspected stroke and went into cardiorespiratory arrest without responding to resuscitation maneuvers, so the doctor on duty confirmed her dead.
In Kenya, some 65 survivors of the Kenyan cult who were rescued from the Shakahola forest are being criminally charged. They were arraigned in the Shanzu court, but the prosecution asked the court to transfer them to prison because the rescue center could no longer accommodate them. The 65 defendants are said to be followers of Pastor Paul McKenzie, the alleged cult leader charged with terrorism for instructing them to fast to death. Meanwhile, the death toll linked to the Kenyan cult has risen to 303 after 19 bodies were exhumed. Police believe most of the bodies were found in a forest near the town of Malindi. The search for mass graves is still underway, where the first victims were discovered on April 13.
In Senegal, an investigation has been opened after videos of armed men in civilian clothes opening fire on demonstrators surfaced. Carlo Valdez reports.
The Senegalese government is investigating videos showing armed men in civilian clothes accused of violently attacking demonstrators during the unrest that followed the conviction of opposition politician Ousmane Sonko in early June. Senegalese Interior Minister Antoine Felix Abdoulaye Diome says in light of the videos, each observer can contribute his or her share of the truth. It will, however, be ultimately up to the courts to tell the truth about what happened. The United Nations has condemned the use of firearms to quell protests in Senegal. It has called for an independent probe and punishment for the perpetrators. The June 1-3 violence was sparked by the handing of a 2-year sentence to opposition figurehead Ousmane Sonko. He is accused of corrupting a young woman, and this has made him ineligible to contest presidential polls next year. Sonko accuses President Macky Sall of trying to install a dictatorship at the apex of a corrupt elite. Amnesty International says around 23 people died in the unrest, some by gunfire. The Senegalese government puts the toll at only 16. Carlo Valdez from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Ireland, asylum seekers are housed in tents outside Dublin's International Protection Office. The country is struggling to provide accommodation to displaced people seeking international protection. Rani Bayuga tells us more.
Asylum seekers in Ireland face the stark reality of being homeless in every sense of the word. Several of them sleep in parks or on the street. Many of them get sick from sleeping out in the cold. And right outside the agency expected to provide protection for the displaced, flimsy tents have become their refuge. Irish Refugee Council CEO Nick Henderson says this is unprecedented, something unlike any other. He says living on the streets is very difficult. There are those who have been assaulted. People with health conditions have been made worse and exacerbated by living rough. To make matters worse, Henderson says that in early May, tents were burnt during the far-right demonstrations. Rani Bayuga for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Nigeria, over 100 people have drowned in the north-central part of the country. The boat carrying several families returning from a wedding capsized in a river. JC Yumul has the details.
A riverboat was ferrying people in Kwara State from a wedding in neighboring Niger State when it went down. The accident is the latest boat tragedy in Nigeria, where river capsize are common due to overloading, lax safety procedures, and heavy flooding in the rainy season. Kwara State Police confirms 103 people dead and over 100 rescued from the boat's unfortunate accident. Search and rescue is still ongoing. This means the toll is expected to rise. Last month, 15 children drowned and 25 others went missing after their overloaded boat capsized in northwest Socorro State. The children were on their way to collect firewood. A year earlier, another 29 children from a nearby village also drowned in the same river. They were also on a trip to collect firewoods for their families. The country has poor road infrastructure. This has become a common problem for travelers. Kidnapping for ransom is also a major issue along some highways. This makes riverboat travel for transport and trade most common in Nigeria. JC Yumul for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Despite fumigation efforts, people in northern Peru are struggling to fight a deadly dengue outbreak. DJ Evangelista tells us more.
In Peru, families are bidding farewell to loved ones who died of dengue fever. Many others remain hospitalized while health brigades fumigate homes in the northern Peruvian towns of Piura and Sullen. The country is facing a vast epidemic of mosquito-transmitted dengue fever. The disease has already claimed 79 lives. It has infected over 79,000 people so far this year, 2023. This is the highest figure since 2017. The dengue clinical surveillance coordinator at Sulana Support Hospital blames the rains, the Yaku cyclone that hit the north of the country, and other climatic issues. He says all these are the breeding ground for the increase of dengue cases in several regions for the country. A recent PAHO report confirms that in the first 10 weeks this year, Peru reported the third highest number of severe dengue cases in the Americas. This after Colombia and Brazil. Other countries affected include Bolivia, Nicaragua, Belize, Guadalupe, Martinique, and Panama. In February, Peru declared a health emergency in several departments after recording an alarming 72% increase in dengue cases from the same period in 2022. DJ Evangelista for Matanang Agila International, Trusted, connected, on point.
In Russia, Kaliningrad landfill catches fire. Local officials say the fire spreads from the municipal solid waste landfill's 350 square meters to 5,000 square meters. According to the Regional Ministry of Emergency Situations, 41 people were involved in extinguishing the fire, while 13 units of special equipment were used. Local authorities say the cause of the fire was due to extremely dry weather. Once again, Britain's health sector braces itself as doctors start a new strike over wages on Wednesday. From United Kingdom, Love and Season reports.
Hospital doctors in England began a new 72-hour strike over pay on Wednesday, prompting warnings from health officials of huge disruption to patients and services. The latest walkout by junior doctors, those below consultant level, starts at 6 a.m. GMT and is set to last until Saturday. The British Medical Association's Junior Doctors Committee say medics have seen a 26% pay cut in real terms in the last 15 years as salaries have failed to keep pace with soaring inflation. They want pay restored to 2008 to 2009 levels, but the government says that would mean an average pay award of about 35% this year and is too costly. It is the latest strike in the state-funded National Health Service, NHS, which has also seen nurses and other medical staff picket for more pay. The BMA warned that while it was open to further talks, it would stage further strikes in the coming months if the government sticks to its 5% offer. A similar walkout in April saw 196,000 hospital appointments and operations rescheduled. Hospital bosses have called for both sides to give ground as they battle huge backlogs in treatment, exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. Some 7 million people were waiting for treatment in April, a record, with nearly 3 million waiting more than 18 months, according to the BMA. The length of time for patients waiting for their first appointments and treatment for cancer was also getting worse, it added. Health Secretary Steve Barclay called the strikes extremely disappointing and said it put patients and work to cut waiting lists at risk. Junior doctors in Scotland on Tuesday rejected what the Scottish government in Edinburgh called its final pay offer of a 14.5% increase over 2 years. BMA Scotland said its members would strike from July 12 to 15. Health policy is a devolved matter for the governments in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, with the UK government in London overseeing England. UK annual inflation slowed to a 13-month low in April but remains elevated at 8.7%. As soaring food prices offset weaker energy costs. This is Love and Season London Bureau for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In northwest Syria, trash is turning out to be a treasure for some of the country's poorest citizens. They rummage through the trash looking for plastic that can be sold to recyclers and turn them into rugs and other items. Thomas I. Likeness has that story.
Environmental stewardship is not the motivating factor behind this endeavor. It's a grim livelihood for those living in rebel-held Syria. These people, often accompanied by their children, brave the stink, the insects, and risk disease as they sift through the rubbish. And for their efforts, they earn $7 to $10 a week. That's up to 4,000 pesos each. They take what they've gathered to a scrapyard where workers sort it into piles according to color. The plastic is then washed, cut up into small pieces, and melted into pellets. The pellets are turned into plastic thread that can be made into mats and rugs. Many of the scavengers fear getting ill from cholera or chronic diseases, but they carry on because there's no other work for them in this war-torn country. More than 500,000 people have died in the civil war, which broke out in 2011, and in that time, half the country's population has been forced from their homes, resulting in a nation that is burdened by poverty. Thomas I. Likeness for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, U.S. judge rejects SEC request for Binance asset freeze. President Marcos hails Filipino athletes in 2023 ASEAN Para Games. And witness Man of the World 2023 candidates feature their country's national costume. Catch more news in business, sports, and entertainment when we return.
A federal judge declined to grant a temporary restraining order on the asset freeze of the U.S. trading platform Binance. Legal experts said the order would allow the U.S. arm of Binance to continue conducting business while it battles restrictions with the SEC. The court also instructed Binance.US to provide a list of its business expenses. The court is set to determine if there was an illegal commingling of funds between Binance and its clients.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. congratulates the Filipino athletes who joined and won in the 2023 ASEAN Para Games held in Cambodia. Marcos hails them by showing their skills and talents for the country and has proven that one's disability is not a hindrance in achieving one's dreams. He added that their success has also brought deeper relations among countries in the region. The Philippines finished fifth in the competition with 34 gold medals, 33 silver medals, and 50 bronze medals. It was the most in the history of the ASEAN Para Games, behind strong outings from the para chess, swimming, and athletics teams. The next edition of the ASEAN Para Games will be held in Thailand on January 2026. Olympic medalist Tori Bowie has died due to complications from childbirth. The U.S. sprinter and former 100-meter world champion was found dead in her home in Orange County, Florida, after local authorities conducted a well-being check on her following concerns from friends and family. Orange County Medical Examiner Office found Bowie was 8 months pregnant and in labor at the time of her death. Officials believe Bowie may have suffered complications from respiratory distress or eclampsia, a condition linked to high blood pressure that causes seizures. Bowie led the U.S. team to a gold medal in the 4x100-meter relay at the 2016 Rio Olympics, where she also earned silver in the 100 meters and bronze in the 200 meters. She also won the 100-meter world title at the World Championships in London the following year and remains the lone American woman to win an Olympic or World 100-meter title since Carmelita Jeter in 2011. Men of the World 2023 candidates feature their country's national costume. Mikey Suede has the details.
In Pasay City, Philippines, the Man of the World 2023 candidates appeared on the runway wearing their ethnic attire. This segment aims to showcase their country's culture and heritage through their costumes. According to Carlo Morris Galang, the president of the Man of the World organization, the national costume competition is an important part of the said male pageant. It gives the contestants a chance to showcase their country's culture and heritage, and it is a popular event with pageant fans.
Man of the World is about a platform for all the male young men all over the world. These young men can represent or can be our ambassador, especially with our motto, masculinity with responsibility, by promoting youth empowerment through education and tourism.
Philippine representative James Reggie Vidal from Tarlac City won the silver medal category for the national costume competition.
Nagiging passionate na din ako, and I love doing pageantries as well and meet other countries and learn about their culture.
Mikey Suede, reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Paul McCartney says artificial intelligence, or AI, has been used to create the last Beatles song or record. He explains AI helped extract John Lennon's voice from an old demo to put it on their new album. McCartney labels AI as scary but exciting. He also confirms the new Beatles song will be released later this year. And to help you get through the week, here's a quote from American tennis icon Arthur Ashe. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
It's a short and simple formula to success.
And we have no excuse.
No excuses. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Lianes.
I am Nina Richielago Flores. Stay tuned for tonight's episode of Counterpoint with Attorney Salvador Panelo and Secretary Jerry Acuzar of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development. This is Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.